see, there it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mac, and welcome everyone. Susan, you brought out a crowd today, this afternoon. We've got 37 people, which is awesome. I know there's a lot of interest in what you have to say, and I know I am as well. So that's great. Glad you're here. To get things going, we would like, I'd like to ask Dick Gross if he would say the invocation for us.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings you have given us. Help us during this most trying time to help our neighbors, to be cautious of what we are experiencing, and to be ever mindful of the health of others. And now we ask that you bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies, and our bodies to your service, and our program to the benefit of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask Mac to give us our announcements. And if you guys look at the newsletter, there is no longer the "Where's Mikey" feature.
You're right here.
But it's still worth looking at. Mac puts a lot of time into it, and there's a lot of great information. So I really encourage you to check out the newsletter every week.
I think we all want to thank him for all that he does. It's amazing, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, so we've got, I see a few folks here that we have as guests. So let's recognize all of our guests first and welcome you here. I'm just going to kind of run through and see who I don't rate. Miss Abbott, which I see you're from the Manatee Community Foundation. Would you like to just say something about yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Jennifer Abbott. I'm the Director of Philanthropy at the Manatee Community Foundation, and it's my great pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you for joining us. And Ms. Doggett, I see you're here with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Doggett, and I work with United Way Suncoast as the Director of Strategic Impact for Manatee, Sarasota, and DeSoto counties.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you for joining us today. And let's see, who else do I not recognize? Oh, Miss Cons. I think you've been here before.
Hi, everyone.
I've forgotten. Remind me of who you're with.
I'm with Bank of America. Mike invited me. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, I recognize you, but I wasn't sure where from. And Karen Gray.
Good afternoon. This is Karen Gray. I'm from Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Excellent. Well, thank you. All righty. Well, Neil, do you want to go ahead and talk about first of all, the Kids Against Hunger, since I can share that with you right now, and you can talk about that for a minute.
Okay, Mac's going to share the screen on volunteer opportunity for Kids Against Hunger. We are doing that on September 16, which is Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. We need one person to fill out the list of 10 for that. And then we have other opportunities on Saturday, September 19th from 10 to noon. We need 7. From 1 to 3, we need another 7. And then on October 3, from 10 to noon, we need 8. And from 1 to 3, we need 6 more. These will, each session will do 5,000 meals. And with these 5 sessions, we'll complete our 50,000 meal commitment for Kids Against Hunger for this fiscal year. So thank you, Mac, for sharing that. I'll jump into Meals on Wheels. Our food distribution event is coming up. The main event is on September 12th, but we have opportunities on Thursday, September 10, and Friday, September 11 to help package the food items that will be going into the food distribution on the 12th. 8:30 to 11, we have 3 slots available. 11:30 to 1:30 on Thursday, we also have 3 slots available. On Friday, we're doing really well. We only need 1 slot filled on September 11, 11:30 to 1:30. And then on Saturday, the main event from 9:15 to 12:15, we have 5 slots available still to help out on that. So you can either sign up through Portal Buzz on that, or you can let me know and I will get you on the list. The Meals on Wheels, I believe, is still restricted to 16 to 64 years of age. No other conditions out there for all safety on there. On Saturday, we'll be doing the loading of the vehicles as well as a little traffic control in the parking lot. And finally, in the newsletter this week, we had opportunities for Keep Manatee Beautiful. Intercoastal cleanup is happening on 5 or 6 different dates throughout September and October. You just show up at the events, so no sign up necessary from us, but just look at the newsletter, find out when those dates are, and if you can volunteer, please do so. And again, thank you for all your service you're doing to our community. Any questions, let us know. Thanks.
All righty, thank you. I think that's pretty much it right now, Mike, so back to you.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything, any kind of announcement or whatever they would like to make? I know when we were meeting in person, I'd get 3 or 4 people that would come up with something that they wanted me to announce, and we don't have that opportunity on Zoom, so I want to give that chance to
Mike,
you.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Do we have any more T-shirts, and maybe Neil, like at some of these events, the packaging events, or even like the intercoastal cleanup, which I need to check out a little bit more. I've got a shirt, and either I've been celebrating a lot, or else it shrunk up on me, something happened. But I need to get like another maybe Kiwanis shirt. Sharon, you had supplied, or you had a source for those before. Do we still have some available?
They were from the Cortez Club. I can reach out to them and give them your name and have them contact you.
Thank you very much.
And it also may be a good time to start thinking about getting some T-shirts for our own club with our own logo and stuff on it. So we can talk about that.
Good.
And one thing I want to mention is just a reminder to everybody that we have our satellite club meetings, and our next one is tomorrow, Wednesday, 6 o'clock at the Riviera Dunes dockside. So I'd love to see anybody there that can make it.
When was that?
It's tomorrow, 6 p.m. at the Riviera Dunes dockside here in Palmetto.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
I just want to
That it?
remind everybody that the census was moved up, so we only have till the end of September. So if you haven't completed the census, if your neighbor hasn't, if your friend, if anybody at all that you know hasn't completed, please make sure they do. That's dollars coming into Manatee County.
Yeah, good point. Thank you so much. All right. With that, I'll ask Christy to introduce our guest.
She's not a guest. She's a member.
Today she is.
Yeah, I don't know how much Susie really needs to be introduced. I'm pretty sure everybody on the call knows Susie. This program was kind of inspired by, I get to hear a lot. And I know some of you get to hear a lot about what's going on in the community. And, I just kind of sat there and I thought to myself, sometimes I try to repeat and I don't know that I get it all right. And we need to be talking about what's going on in the community because it's changing rapidly. And I felt that having, Susie share with us what they're seeing on a higher spectrum, across the whole broad, all of the different entities and nonprofits and the needs that are in the community would be a good idea. And to give us all some insight to help us all kind of evaluate for ourselves, what we see that's going on. Everybody has different backgrounds of where they're coming from, and you may get to see this stuff and you may not. So I thought it would be a great opportunity for her to share. And I'm going to do a preemptive comment. I also said to Susie that it would be really nice if some of this could be a discussion, not so much all of us being talked to. So she's leaving room in it for everybody to ask questions. So I would ask that we all be mindful and thoughtful. If you think of something, there are no dumb questions. You know, we're in a time where every question has validity to it. And, you know, even if it's a question that you already know the answer to, but you think there may be people on this call that don't know, please ask it. This is the forum to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susie.
Thank you so much. It is so nice to see everybody. I can't wait for the time when we can see each other in person again. But it's nice to see your faces over Zoom. And there's so many subject matter experts on the call today, whether your expertise is in post-secondary education or early learning or food distribution. So you guys jump in as well. And this is just meant to be an overview of some of the needs that we're seeing in the community from our point of view. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. And share some information with you as we go through this. So I just want to start out and say, you know, there's so many ways that we can help our community. There's so many challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunity. And I think that COVID has given us all a chance to take a look at our operations, whether we are the Kiwanis or the foundation or another organization serving the community, and figure out how we can adjust and be flexible and be responsive. And it's impossible to do our work without the support of the business community. And there's a few people on the call today that I want to recognize. Mike Bear and Dex. Your company is amazing, not only to Manatee Community Foundation and helping us with our work, but helping so many organizations. Jamie and Mike with Bank of America. It has been incredible to see what Bank of America has done, not only locally, but on a national basis, nationally leading so much of this work. United Way Suncoast is an incredible partner, not only to Manatee Community Foundation, but to many. And there are many other donors that are on the call that make a difference, not only through Kiwanis or through the foundation, but just on their own. So you are so appreciated. So what have nonprofits faced in the last 5 months? Man, they have faced a lot, and they have adapted quickly. They have adapted courageously. They have done so many new things, and they've done them very quickly so that they can make sure they're meeting the need of people who have sought help from them before the pandemic and new people who have come to them because of new needs that they've experienced. And we have really been amazed when we see how quickly this transformation has occurred with relatively few resources to support them. So they've been through a lot, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that looked like. One of the things that, of course, we've seen that we've all had to do with individual businesses, whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit, is this requirement to rapidly adapt to technology. And that's meant many operational changes for organizations as they figured out how to deploy their workforce, some of them at home, some of them working directly with people, and trying to minimize the risk and exposure to COVID. Many organizations have made a very quick transition to effective virtual programming. We know that some of that programming is very difficult and we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the service recipients that might not have the technology they need to access it from home. But we've seen an increase in nonprofit telemedicine and telecounseling. We know all about the transfer of our educational assets to virtual, which has impacted kids in very interesting and sad ways in some cases. These massive investments in safety, that's a lot of money that nonprofits have been asked to invest in PPE and cleaning materials. There has been some relief provided from them through the CARES Act funding that's available to nonprofits through our county government. But it's been a huge expense as we've looked at how to keep volunteers and staff safe, but also how to keep clients safe. And that's a whole new world. At the beginning of COVID, just trying to get your hands on PPE was very difficult and challenging. As you all know, the canceled fundraising events is something that no one expected. Many organizations depend on their fundraising events to bring people together, share updates about their mission, and also to raise money that they had counted on in their budgets. And they not only faced fundraising events that they had to cancel in the first few months of COVID, but now trying to plan, what are we going to do in the fall? What are we going to do in January, February, and March when we're typically holding our events? How are we going to make that work to raise the money we need to raise? If you all are tired of virtual meetings, you're going to be really tired of virtual fundraising events. So trying to come up with creative ways to engage people and raise money that way is what our organizations are facing. So in many cases, although not in all cases, but in many cases, what we're seeing, of course, is a decreased availability of resources that are needed to meet the needs of the community and increased needs. And again, it's not true for all organizations. Some have experienced a wonderful increase in funding that's come from all kinds of sources because of the nature of their organizations, and others are going to be really struggling. This is also going to be an issue that's going to last a while. It's going to take us a while to catch up. So even if COVID ended today, the long-term impacts of what has just occurred, it's going to take us a while to catch up with those. So we've learned a lot at Manatee Community Foundation. I really appreciate my caring team. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on the phone with people. We want to thank, again, United Way Suncoast for all the time they've spent with people. Our Manatee County government convenes calls every week. There's a separate call for homelessness and food security. We have really enjoyed being part of those weekly calls so that we can understand what's going on in the greater landscape and we can figure out what our place is. If anyone involved in Kiwanis wants to be part of those calls, I know that the county government would welcome your voices and just your listening. We do a lot of listening on those calls so that we can understand what everyone else is doing and make sure that we are dedicating our resources to filling the gaps where they exist. Here's some of the things that we've learned, and I'm sure you know these all too well, especially if you're on the call and you're with a nonprofit organization. Look, we have found that the need to have flexible resources is huge. So let's just think about how many volunteers nonprofits engage and how many of those volunteers are seniors or they're people who are compromised in terms of their health. They might have long-term conditions. They might have other things that we don't even know about. So we've learned with many organizations, especially some of the food pantries in our community that have depended on older volunteers for help, when they're not able to come in and help with the distribution, some of the organizations have had to hire staff that have come on a part-time basis to fill those needs. And of course, that's more money that they need to raise. The ability to refocus grant dollars. Manatee Community Foundation is so guilty of this. Many of the grants that we give are for very, very specific needs, and it's become very apparent to us that the more we can support organizations with their operating, the better we're positioning organizations for success, because needs are going to change rapidly. And one of the best things we can do is find organizations that we trust with results that we see and just give them the money that they need to do their jobs. Spend a lot of time calling organizations and saying, look, we know you have a grant contract with us for this particular need. Do you need to change that? And if they've given us a reasonable way they need to change it and redeploy the resources, we've told them that they can. Some organizations were fortunate enough to have reserves so that they could draw on those reserves when they have not been able to raise the money that they've needed, or when the need has just increased. And so as their reserves go down, or for organizations that never had reserves, we see that this is more important than ever. Racial inequities that have long existed have been underscored by the pandemic. That is really important for us to look at as funders and as donors. The facts are, communities of color have suffered to a greater degree when we look at the health impacts of COVID and also when we look at the educational impacts to our system. We've been seeing that across the country. This isn't something that's unique to our community. That's been something we've been learning and talking a lot about. And finally, there are a lot of organizations with earned revenue models that are typically make them a lot more thrivable that have actually led to greater losses during COVID. So thinking about all of our arts and cultural organizations, for example, they're empty theaters, they're empty performances. People have tried the most creative things with virtual performances, which are exciting, but it's not like filling those seats, right? So they are out quite a bit of money when they look at the annual revenue they were hoping to bring in. Arts Center Manatee, they've had to transition to some digital classes, and that's really difficult for them. Think about the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature. I believe that they're down quite a bit when it comes to their visitorship, and this is money that's used to fund education for kids, education for our community that's so important. So these are just some of the trends that we've noticed as COVID has continued to impact our community. I do want to make it clear that some organizations have taken this opportunity to build better and stronger operations. I don't know if Rick Yoakum is on the call from the Humane Society. I know that they are frequently at our meetings, and it's been incredible what they have done with COVID to build the strength of their organization. They already had an emergency plan that they put into place. They've worked the plan. They've improved on the plan. We get regular updates for them, and it's really exciting to see what they've done. Other organizations like the Women's Resource Center that work to get all of their programming available virtually very quickly have not only strengthened the programs that they offer their own clients, but other organizations look to them for their resources. So they've been able to react very quickly and make some changes that they will probably sustain in the long term that have made their organizations even better. So we're really excited to learn from them and find ways that we can invest in some of those innovations that will stay around. I want to share with you some of the data that we were able to collect. There were 7 foundations that came together. We prepared surveys. There were 2 different surveys that were sent to the nonprofit sector in 4 counties because we wanted to learn how COVID was impacting them. And if you're on this call and you're a nonprofit that completed the survey, thank you. I know your very favorite thing to do in the middle of a pandemic is stop what you're doing and complete a survey, right? That's just, nobody wants to do that. But we've been able to use the information to inform a lot of the work that we've done. And I want to share some of those results with you all today. So these are some of the results that came through in May. 33% of all the organizations are planning to cut at least some of the programs or services that they offer because of the impact of COVID. Less than 50% were planning to offer programs at pre-COVID levels. So this is less than 50% of all of the local nonprofit organizations that were planning to offer those programs at levels before, okay? And about 53% were actually planning to offer new programs and services that were obviously inspired by new needs or new methods to deliver services. It's pretty striking when you see those numbers. What does the staffing look like? So more than 50% of the organizations that we talked to were cutting staff, right? Which is pretty significant, okay? Are you rethinking your business model? About 46% said yes, we're going to have to rethink our business model. And we've talked to some organizations such as Unidos Now, which serves Hispanic Latino students to ensure that their educational dreams can be achieved. They have totally reinvented their business model during COVID because they've learned that the families that they're serving don't even have their basic needs met. So they have transitioned some of their services away from education and toward helping the families just achieve the basic needs that they need so that they can continue to pursue education. About a third of them at the time we talked to organizations said that they're not sure if they're rethinking their business model, and about a quarter said that they're not having to rethink it. But there's a lot of rethinking that we're having to do to determine not only are we going to survive as an organization, but how we're going to best serve the clients that need the support. These are some of the anticipated business model changes that our local nonprofits are looking at. And I think this is really important because it helps to inform giving, whether it's giving from Kiwanis or giving from your own pocket or giving from some of our other funding institutions. The use of technology is a really big one. That should be no surprise. Does everyone have the devices they need to do their work? Do our clients have the devices they need to access our services? That's been a really big point of conversation. How can we form new partnerships with organizations that are doing some of the work so that we can better inform our community about services we need, but also work together to provide the services? New opportunities to engage our clients and patrons. This won't surprise you, but diversified fundraisers. How are we going to make up for some of the income we might be losing through doing those live fundraising events? How can we cost share? Some of them have talked about narrowing their scope of services. So finding out, what is it as an organization that we do really well, and how can we focus on that one thing and make sure that we serve clients in that way? Some organizations have talked about membership fees as well, and how they might alter those or introduce a membership fee so that they can better sustain their business model. I want to shift to some big issues that impact children and families and kind of open it up for a bit of a conversation, because this is so central to the work that Bradenton Kiwanis has been engaged in our community for 100 years. Education is the first space that we look to, and there have been so many changes and adaptations so quickly in education. Education is key to the future of our community, as we all know. And I want to talk about this in a couple of different ways. This is not a local conversation again, but a national conversation about digital equity. You know what happened when our kids were sent home in the spring to learn from home? There were several issues that really impacted how well kids could continue to learn at home. One of them was, does each child have a device at home? For this school year, Manatee County School District has made incredible strides in making sure that all of our kids have their own devices. I know, in the spring, there was an issue with some families. Let's say there were 10 people in a single household, and maybe there were only a couple of laptops, and mom or dad might have needed to use that laptop to look for work, right? How are these kids supposed to access the devices they need to get their education? The second big issue in digital equity, which is a conversation happening everywhere, is, do these families have access to Wi-Fi? If they have a device, are they actually able to log on? And you would be surprised to know how many families in Manatee County are unable to afford this service, right? And so that becomes a really big issue. In the spring, it was huge when families couldn't get into libraries and other places. They might typically be able to tap into the Wi-Fi. I know Manatee Community Foundation and Manatee Education Foundation have helped to fund some hotspots. Our local library is looking at purchasing some hotspots that can be checked out so that families can use those in their homes. But that's a really big deal. If you don't have money for food, and if you don't have money for housing, you probably are not going to have money to access the internet from your home. And then once you have all of these things, are you going to be able to navigate the program? Are you going to be able to use Schoology? Do you have somebody who is at home that's not working 2 and 3 jobs that can sit with you by the computer to help you learn? So those have been really big issues from the perspective of making sure our kids can continue the quality education they need. This second piece is really near and dear to my heart, and Bronwyn, I want to thank you and your team at United Way Suncoast for your exceptional leadership. But look, we have got a lot of work to do in making sure that our kids who are already behind are going to be able to catch up. they are really far behind. And there are two spaces that I'm going to talk about with this. One of them is grade level reading. I know we've talked a lot about that in Kiwanis, but if you're not reading on grade level by the end of the 3rd grade, your chances of success in life are significantly diminished. There are a number of children in our community that were struggling in this space before COVID. And now they've missed out on a couple of months of schooling that they're really able to, where they're able to progress, right? Our school district has done an amazing job of trying to help these kids. But the bottom line is, right, if you are already behind and you're in a home where you were struggling to get the Wi-Fi or you were struggling to understand the learning from your home, you're probably further behind. Second thing I want to talk about is the importance of post-secondary education. Thanks to USF, Sarasota Manatee, and thanks to the State College of Florida, we have incredible resources for post-secondary ed in our community, Manatee Technical College as well. In a recent study, a recent survey around our state, 42% of high school graduates indicated that they were changing their plans for post-secondary education due to COVID. Either they were having to go into a gap year because they had to be at home helping their families by working, or there was something else that changed their plan. The problem is if we put post-secondary education off, if we don't engage in post-secondary education, our workforce in Manatee County is not going to be ready for the future. So these are young people that are having to change their plans. So these are two spaces in education, the grade level reading and the post-secondary education, that are so important for us not to lose traction on. So that's part of the education piece. And I'm just going to stop there to see if anyone has any other comments about these issues.
Yeah, Susie, one of the questions I had asked about this was, has there been a conversation with the county or the city about opening up more Wi-Fi areas like downtown and out in some of the outer areas around some of the parks, where kids congregate and where parents can get them to have access to the services?
So over the summer and then in the late spring, the school district actually, they outfitted buses, right, with Wi-Fi, and they took the buses to more remote areas so that kids and others could come and they could access the Wi-Fi there. Of course, the problem now is those buses are being used to transport kids. We are currently working with the libraries to help them purchase some hotspots and services for those hotspots so that not only families can check them out, but they're planning on putting some in public buildings so that families can access those. But the issue is much bigger than something that we are able to tackle alone. I know that the school district has had conversations with some of the internet service providers to see if they can just provide those services at no cost in families that need it. They were able to do some of that in the spring, but it was not provided in homes where the families had an outstanding bill, which is of course not the fault of these students. So that's a great question, and that could be an area where Kiwanis could invest in some of the kids and learning. It's a really big need, and the calls that Bronwyn has been leading with the campaign for grade level reading, we've had a number of conversations about this. The Patterson Foundation is trying to do some national work around this issue. And, you know, I gotta be honest, it's something I didn't think a lot about until COVID. And it's really astonishing to think of not only how it impacts kids, but impacts families.
Yeah, that was one of the things. So there've been a few other cities where they've opened up their Wi-Fi, so the whole downtown area is on a wide area network where you can get on. And it just seems to me that instead of trying to go maybe into individual homes, that if services could be provided, you know, more broadly in some of those public spaces where the kids can get to them without having to rely upon having to walk through somebody else's door.
That's right. I would like to maybe connect you or the right person at Kiwanis to the conversation that I've started with the library system, because I think there might be some great partnerships, and it's something that of course we can't do alone. So that would be a wonderful way just to work together, or to even have someone from the library system come and chat with Kiwanis about what they're doing to make this service more available. But that's a great thought.
Yeah, I think that would be a good program, Susie. One thing I would like to point out that I think, unless you have kids in school, you may not know this. Even the kids who are going back 5 days a week, all of their assignments have to be turned in online, which my son complains about every day. But, you know, if you don't have Wi-Fi and you have to turn all your assignments on online, you have to do it while you're at school, or you can't do it when you get home. So it's not just the kids that are doing virtual or half or partial weeks, it's all of them. Issues still.
That's right. I mean, I never thought about what it might be like to have a son or daughter at home and working on a project for school and not to be able to go online. I mean, what is that like? I mean, no wonder some of these kiddos are challenged with that. Let's see in the chat. I just want to make sure. Dawn, do you want to unmute yourself and share?
Thank you. I just shared on the chat that the school district's also looking towards community partnerships to support kids, especially in the e-learning environment. Obviously, we're only the third week into the new school year, but they're already seeing quite a few kids that are signed up as e-learners that are either not turning in the coursework on time or have been really struggling with getting connected for a variety of reasons. And so they're talking to area churches, utilizing spaces like the Boys and Girls Club to provide some alternative locations for families so that if their child is struggling and they're not quite ready to get them back into the classroom, then they can spread them out into other areas in the community to get the Wi-Fi, but also to have that supportive and safe environment to provide some supervision and some guidance.
I think the other thing too, you have to remember, it's not just the kids. A lot of these parents who are out of work, the only way you can try to even get a job and send your resume in is through online services. And if they can't get to them either, it's kind of an issue as well.
That's right. Many of you may have read in the paper today, there was a piece about the Women's Resource Center just did a pilot project with Goodwill, Minnesota, and they worked with a small cohort of women to get them trained up in financial literacy. And once they went through the program, they got a laptop and they're getting some access. So some of those are really important things that we don't think about. Someone says, what about using local churches for Wi-Fi access? That's an incredible idea. And I know that our school district has been talking with churches and other faith-based organizations for some plans around COVID as well. If they had to shut down a school, is there a way that they can partner with a church so that there's a place for those kids to go while they do a deep clean and some other really unique partnerships. So I think that kind of thinking is what is going to get us through all of this. I want to, let's see, go to the next slide here. I want to talk about some of the other issues that we're seeing, and there's no way that we can get into the details of all of them, but look, food security, this is an issue that is not going to go away or be diminished, and that's why I think that the work that Kiwanis is not only doing with funding projects, but being directly involved with volunteer support is just so important. Amy, I think I saw you on this call. Thanks so much to Meals on Wheels Plus for all of your leadership. There are a lot of really tricky logistics involved in this work. A lot of hard work that's been planned around how to best serve the food pantries, how to do direct distribution events, how to partner with Manatee County schools to make sure that students have the food that they need over the summer. And all of that work is so important. And I know that Amy could tell you that the numbers aren't going to be going down anytime soon. I'm sure they're seeing people that normally would never need assistance with food that are coming and asking for food support. So I think that investments around food security, that's a place where you can never go wrong. Looking at some of the other needs that are emerging. Mental health is another huge need that we're seeing. Housing. you know, listen, we've had a wonderful moratorium on evictions in our state that's kept people in their homes, a lot of people in their homes. There have been some loopholes and some people have still been evicted, but when that moratorium is lifted, we're going to be in the middle of a little crisis here with housing. So think about children and families, think about children and families who are already on the edge and how they're going to be able to access the housing they need and the security they need from being in a home that doesn't change. There are already some programs in our community that are addressing those. Manatee County government through CARES Act funding has a way for families to apply for help. There's also Season of Sharing, which is a partnership with the Community Foundation of Sarasota County and the Herald Tribune that also serves families in Manatee County, where people who are at risk for losing their homes can apply for one-time assistance, and United Way is helping in this space as well. So there's a lot of support in the area of housing, but I think the needs are going to be tremendous, especially as we look at this moratorium being lifted. And for families that have depended on this to stay in their homes, they're not just going to owe 1 month of rent. They're looking, many of them are looking at the full 5 months. Mental health needs. So think about, and I know that International Kiwanis has done a great job in the past of spotlighting the mental health needs of children in the magazine that we get, but the rate of depression and anxiety in children is already extremely high. And when you think about families that are very stressed financially, when you also think about all of the time that they have spent in the house together, the stress of the family in terms of mental health is huge. So typically in times when our economy declines and we see lots of new financial stresses on families, that's when domestic violence increases. And that's when we see many other problems that are connected with mental health. So we expect that investments in mental health are going to need to increase to accommodate those. Health and human services are so important, but I don't want to leave this conversation without mentioning how important our arts and cultural organizations are. When we think about the Manatee Performing Arts Center and Arts Center Manatee and the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature, all of these organizations have really important roles in terms of education for our children and our families. And these are organizations, again, that have depended on earned income. And when we see that all of those seats are empty because they can't get people in there, or when we see that visitorship is down, it's a time when we need to come forward and support those institutions. So again, I want to stop here and see if anyone on the call has something to add in this space, maybe that I didn't mention that's really important. So here are some national trends in grant making that I think are pretty important. Because of all the things that we just talked about, we're seeing a trend toward more operating and unrestricted support, right? How can we find the organizations that we trust, that we know are delivering valuable services, and provide them with the support they need to be flexible and meet the changing needs of their clients? The second thing is that there's a, thank goodness, right, if you're an organization, listening to the needs that nonprofits have instead of coming to them with new projects that we think they should do. And again, I'm going to raise my hand and say Manatee Community Foundation has not always been good in this space. But listen, who knows most about the issue but the organizations that are closest to it? So it takes a great deal of time on the nonprofit's behalf when you bring them an idea and it's something that you want to try. One of the greatest things we can do is listen to what their needs are and just meet them where they are, even if it doesn't seem like the most exciting thing to you. Using this lens of equity, understanding more about inequities that already exist in our systems, and then including people that may be people that are underserved and helping to make the decisions about our grants so that we're not operating in a vacuum. And finally, decreasing that response time. So how do we have a grant process that doesn't last a couple of months? Because I guarantee you by the end of the couple of months, the needs will probably have changed a bit, right? So how can we talk to organizations quickly, understand what their needs are, and try to get the money out there so that we can help them immediately? These are some of the trends we're seeing nationally. In terms of getting more out of your giving, I know all of us want to get as much as we can out of the money that we have. One of the questions that we're asking now whenever we talk to organizations is, tell us a little bit about what you're giving from the CARES Act funding in Manatee County, because we know that the government resources are larger than the resources we have here in the philanthropic sector. And if there's money they're able to get through the CARES Act, is there a way that we can enhance that instead of duplicating it? I know that Janine has spoken with some of you about the idea of program-related investments, where you can make an incredible loan to an organization at a very, very low interest rate, and they can repay that money over time. It helps organizations and it helps you as well. Just to talk a moment about matching, there are ways that you can offer matching funds to organizations and get a, double return on your investment. But I would recommend that you talk to the organization first to make sure it's something they can do. Sometimes when you put a matching requirement on an organization, they can meet it quickly and it inspires other donors to give, and it works out so well for everyone. And sometimes you're talking to an organization that just doesn't have the capacity to do that matching, and it might actually end up taking time away from the important program work that they're trying to do. Kiwanis, I think, does this better than anyone I've ever seen, which is the time, talent, and treasure. So I know that many times we're looking for projects where we can give a little bit of money, but also volunteer and also share some of the things that we know. So these are just ways that we can get more out of the giving. And I, again, want to emphasize the power of partnerships. I know that we've benefited greatly by partnering with United Way, in some cases with Kiwanis for the food distribution event in June, and with our county government, so that we're using all of our resources. I want to just lead us through some questions that are really helpful when we consider the strategy of giving and what's most important to us. Look, does Kiwanis want a unique role in the COVID-19 funding landscape? What is the unique role that we can take on? We know that Kiwanis has a strategic plan. We know that there are some things that we've talked about in the past that we'd really like to follow through with. And I think that there are many unique roles that Kiwanis can have while it's also partnering with others and leveraging the money it has to give. How can you partner with a nonprofit in a way that's meaningful for Kiwanis without creating a distraction for the work that's been prioritized by that nonprofit? So again, approaching organizations, making sure that you're doing something that's really a priority for the organization is really important. And I think we all know the difference. This is something that's difficult during a time of COVID, but are you going to focus more on immediate needs, or do you want to tackle a leadership role in leading to more systemic change in our community? There's a lot of immediate needs right now. And so sometimes that systemic change is something that takes a little bit longer, but you can also look at your immediate giving in that lens of how it's leading to change. An example would be the Community Partnership School project. I know that the Boys and Girls Club and Big Brothers Big Sisters and many other organizations are working on some really focused funding at the Community Partnership School, which is Manatee Elementary. And even though the immediate needs are being met with those projects, or will be met, that's helping to lead to a greater change in the system that will impact those kids and how they learn and the services they're able to get. This is one that we talk a lot about at Manatee Community Foundation. Would you rather impact fewer kids and have a bigger impact in their lives, right? Or impact a greater number of kids more broadly? I know it's super nice to say that during the course of 1 year, you've had an impact on 5,000 kids, but it's impossible to have the same impact on 5,000 kids as you might have on a smaller group of kids where you're really helping to change their lives with concentrated resources. And there's probably a space in the middle that feels comfortable for Kiwanis, but just keep in mind when you're talking about services, right? What's a service that's actually going to lead to gains for those kids? And what's a service that might just feel good because they were sitting in a class or they were sitting in some sort of in program? So think about the impact perhaps of focusing your dollars and what kind of impact that can have. So, and that leads me to the next one. What's more important to Kiwanis? Is it more important for you to have like warm fuzzies and a really feel-good project, or knowing that you help to make gains for people that were directly impacted by your support? And I would attest that you can have the warm fuzzies by making those gains, right? If that's what you're trying to do as well. Here's another question for you. If you know that the organization is making a difference for the people coming to it for services, are you willing to invest in unrestricted support? What about committing to multi-year support? It's very hard for an organization to get a large infusion of dollars from one source and then immediately the next year figure out how it's going to raise that money. And Kiwanis has done a great job in the past of starting incredible programs or giving a big boost to certain programs and then kind of weaning off, right, over the years. And you all know the projects that I'm referring to, but that's a wonderful way to approach it so that you're not leaving an organization cold after you've made that big investment. And finally, is it important for you, Kiwanis, to include conversations about diversity and equity in your grant making process? I'm again going to call out Bank of America. Jamie and her team have done incredible work in this space. And there's a lot we can learn from them locally. And there's a lot that Bank of America is doing nationally in this space. And it's really been inspiring to watch them. So those are some of the questions that Kiwanis can ask itself as it thinks about, you know, we all only have so much money. And so with that money, we have to make some choices and we have to give some focus to our giving. So again, I'm going to stop there and see what some of your thoughts and comments might be.
Hey, Susie.
Yes.
Ann has her hand up.
Is
too.
there any kind of data that could show us where the areas are in the community that don't have the Wi-Fi access?
Mm-hmm. We can get that. So I think the school district has excellent information on that, and I will reach out. My go-to person has been Kevin Chapman, and he is, I believe, the director of strategic initiatives or strategic planning for the county. And I will reach out to him and can I just copy you in, Mike, so I can get you in on the conversation? But that would be great. And of course, that is a continuing issue because it's once again going back to having the devices, but then having the service. And so paying for that service is incredibly costly. And it's a continuing expense that the schools have.
Miss Jan, go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Susie, we talked a little while ago about how many children and families we can help in the event that some of these housing things start to come to fruition sooner for the families of problems, or some of the kids can't go to school, maybe they've got the virus, or they have other issues. Have you talked to other nonprofits about what kind of a frame they would use in order to decide how and who they can accommodate, and in what sort of sense, children and families, etc.
So, and Bronwyn may be able to speak up about some of the work that they've done with United Way, I'll just speak to Season of Sharing, for example, because Season of Sharing is a fund, but the money goes to different fiscal agents in our county. So in our county, the fiscal agents are Turning Points and Step Up Suncoast. And what they do is, first of all, everybody is tied together in a system. So we know if a family has already accessed funding from one place, they can't go to another place and get it again. It's meant to be one-time funding. And they have changed some of the requirements to make it more COVID friendly, but basically it's that one-time assistance, and it can pay for a rental payment. It could pay for an electricity payment if that's going to be turned off, something that they need immediately, right? And so because they're working, you have to be working with a caseworker in order to get it. And so that caseworker takes certain information from the family to make sure, right, they really need it, but it's also meant to be done with very little red tape so that they don't have to go, they don't have to walk 500 miles in order to get the support. But once they get it, they get it. So one of the things we like about that system is that they are all tied together. And they do look at some of the financial information, but they also make sure that it is not an arduous process for the family to go through. And right now, that's available on a first come, first serve basis. And I don't know if anyone is on the call from the county, but I think the county support is a bit higher than that. I can send you all the information. It's on their website about how, and I think Sherry Courier was just telling me their problem right now is just getting that information out to families. I know that Gulf Coast Legal Services has also been working, we might not think about them as a human service organization, but they've spent a lot of time, and Legal Aid of Minnesota, working with families to help them understand what resources are available for them and what legal rights they have. We also worry there are also families that own these rental units that have not been able to pay their own mortgages, right? They're not bad people, but they're not getting money that they counted on. So it's not necessarily that the people renting them are bad people, right? It's just it's a big issue. So that gets to some of your question, but I don't know how it's being handled with others.
Susie, I can weigh in a little bit on what United Way is doing in terms of the eviction crisis, because in Manatee County, if I have the stat correctly, that's about 1,400 families that are facing that when the moratorium is lifted. Thankfully, it was extended another month, but we don't expect that it will be extended again. So we have created a white paper to help our commissioners understand the need, but we've also been working with other nonprofits in our 5-county region to develop a fund to support our families who are facing eviction, and working with Gulf Coast Legal, Bay Pines, I believe I may have that correctly, I'm not in the Tampa market, and Legal Aid of Minnesota, so that we also have lawyers who can work with our families to help them mitigate any of that stress as well. So just some of that going on, as well as our fund out in community in partnership with Catholic Charities, Women's Resource Center, and Salvation Army. We invested $100,000 in ensuring that emergency needs could be met through those 3 organizations, and we just invested another 30 as those dollars went pretty quickly in the first 2 months. So just a quick FYI there.
That white paper that Bronwyn mentioned is really excellent. And if we can maybe, I was looking, I have the link somewhere, but maybe can put it in chat or something. It's just a great resource to keep us all engaged. And I know one of the things that our team has tried to do, but it's so hard. I mean, there are so many issues out there, so many far-reaching issues, and just staying on top of them, which is why the ability to share and some of this information and research with all of us makes us all stronger organizations and better able to help people.
So Susie, when you talk about the county, you're talking about the CARES Act money, which is a different bucket of money that's coming in, that's going to be going out, and they can do individual grants too for rent and utilities.
I'll send you the information. Yeah, so it's been split up in a few different ways. So businesses and nonprofits and community organizations, businesses, and then there's that piece as well. And, that just to emphasize the resources of Manatee County government and the people that work in neighborhood services. I mean, they're spending all day, every day, trying to understand the complexity of these issues, mapping where the issues are, the hot spots. I know we talked a bit about the community partnership schools, and I know you're familiar with this from a presentation that you had from United Way Suncoast not that long ago, but the 10 schools that are working in that area that are the focus of the big plan. I mean, those children and families have tremendous needs. And again, the work to isolate, since we don't have money for every single person, how can we isolate where the biggest needs are and really help to address those? That's tremendous. I think that's the hardest thing, is when you have such great care, how do you figure out how to use, right, your resources most effectively, since you can't fund everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're past 1 o'clock. However, this is a great conversation. If anybody needs to drop, go ahead. But you know, as long as Mac's willing to keep this Zoom channel open here, this is important to continue. So we'll continue the conversation. But if you need to go, completely understand. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Mike. I'm just, I want to emphasize how incredible our local organizations are and what they've done to care for our community, but also how incredible our business community is. They keep coming forward and giving, and many of them have been impacted by the crisis as well. And we just live in such a great place. So I think there's a lot of expertise on the Zoom if other people have questions. Or maybe not, Mike. They're ready for the 1 o'clock meeting, whatever that is.
Well, I had, what was, when you went back and revisited after the initial study back in March or whatever, what surprised you the most?
Yeah, here's what surprised me the most, and I'm going to end on a positive note. We asked a question, and I'll send everybody this, the entire report so that you can read the entire report. We asked a question that said, what has been good about COVID, or what are some positive things? And the number of organizations that took time to write positive things despite staff being cut, or the overwhelming need, or going home every night thinking about the people they couldn't serve. It has just been, it was wonderful to read those things and to read the innovations that nonprofits have come up with. The Women's Resource Center, to go back to them, they had been wanting to do digital and virtual work for a long time. And in 4 or 5 days, they were able to get it done. And they're still using those systems. And likely, even when we're able to meet face-to-face, they will continue to have that virtual component, because for some people, it does work out better. If you have an issue with transportation, that can be a much better fit for you. You don't have to worry about taking a bus to go to talk to a counselor somewhere. So it's really incredible. The Boys and Girls Club, for example, what they have been able to do with social distancing and taking care of kids. They quickly formed a partnership with the Early Learning Coalition, and they were able to work with first responders kids and essential workers kids. I mean, the way that nonprofits looked at those needs, made the quick adaptations, and just made it happen, that was, I mean, it's been surprising to learn how quickly some of those things have happened. And it makes me feel really proud of nonprofits.
I know for me, you know, I just, you know, some of you on the call know this, some may not. Susie's been talking to us from the very beginning of this happening at an executive level. And I think she's talked to our foundation, our club, and the board. And, you know, there are the things that the community foundation, all the hard work you guys have been doing, talking to all of the nonprofits, gathering the information, trying to get everybody on the same, you know, just trying to gather everything to get everybody focused in the same way to figure out where are we at and what do we need to address and what are the big things. That was a huge undertaking. When we called you guys in the beginning and you told us what you had done, I thought, how many hours did y'all spend on the phone? And how many times did you hang up the phone and just want to cry? You know, some of it's really hard to absorb and take, and then try to help give them redirection and send them in a way that's going to get them going where they need to go, or get them, you know, linked in with who they need to be linked in with. That's a lot to take on too. I mean, a lot of our nonprofit organizations have been going through that, and I appreciate that. I mean, I deal with people in their financial crisis. You're dealing with the whole crisis, all the aspects of it. It's a lot. So for that, I thank you, and I thank every other nonprofit on this phone call that's having to figure out how to shift and shift quickly. It's not been easy. So I appreciate that thoughtfulness and mindfulness as you go through it step by step.
So grateful for you and Kiwanis. I mean, this is the best Kiwanis, right? It really is. People care so deeply and do so much. I see that Mac is saying, where's the PowerPoint? You said you were going to put it on the thing. So I'm looking to upload it to the chat. And then I will also send it to you all as a PDF so that you have it. And then Bronwyn's white paper, and then the information from the county.
Yes, any information that you can give to us to help us be connected and in sync with what's going on in the community, since it's changing so quickly and moving at the pace that it is, we would be very appreciative. And if you want to send it to MacRI, we can email it out to the whole database.
Well, thank you so much, Susie. And you know, the tradition is a golden ruler, but I think we got a yardstick for you. We just appreciate you so much and everything that you do for the club and for the community. And
Great.
I agree with Christy. I couldn't say any better than she did, but it's just great to see the community coming together and all the work that you've done, as well as all the other nonprofits and volunteers that we have on the Zoom here today. So with that, appreciate everybody staying over a little bit to hear what we had to say. Mac has got the bell, so we're going to be dismissed. Have a great day.